A diplomatic dispute is threatening to derail relations between two new allies at a key moment in the Iran conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a major diplomatic breakthrough on Wednesday, saying he secretly traveled to the UAE and met with its president, Mohammed bin Zayed, a first for an Israeli leader. But just hours later, the UAE denied the visit took place, and Iran is now accusing America's Mideast allies of collusion with Israel, claiming there will be consequences.
Israel just sent them Iron Dome batteries and personnel to help operate them. How come? Because there's an extraordinary relationship between the UAE and Israel.
Iran is also making military moves in the Strait of Hormuz. On Thursday, it seized another commercial vessel. The British military says it's now steaming toward Iranian waters, a significant escalation after days of relative calm.
The Strait of Hormuz is open for all, commercial vessels. But they need to cooperate with our Navy forces.
And with talks remaining stalled, some experts are now saying a return to combat operations is inevitable.
Going full throttle will help us reduce Iran's capability to retaliate against the Straits of Hormuz.
But the White House continues to insist it's looking for a diplomatic solution.
Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That's the goal that we're focused on. Again, there's a lot of ways to accomplish that goal.
Iran's military claimed Thursday it's preparing to repel any new American airstrikes in the coming days. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
今天，我同特朗普总统就中美关系和国际及地区形势深入交换意见。我们一致认为，中美关系是当今世界最重要的双边关系，只能搞好，不能搞坏。两国合则两利，斗则俱伤，应该成为伙伴而不是对手。我们同意构建中美建设性战略稳定关系，推动中美关系稳定、健康、可持续发展。
习近平主席与特朗普总统会谈当中指出，台湾问题是中美关系中最重要的问题，处理好了，两国关系就能保持总体稳定；处理不好，两国就会碰撞甚至冲突，将整个中美关系推向十分危险的境地。台独与台海和平水火不容，维护台海和平稳定是中美双方最大公约数，美方务必慎之又慎处理台湾问题。
President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. Talk to me about that moment when that was discussed.
Well, they certainly feel that way, and they always raise that issue, and we understand they raise that issue. From our perspective, any forced change in the status quo and the situation that's there now would be bad for both countries. One of the things the Chinese emphasize, which we agree, is strategic stability in our relationship, a constructive relationship, but also one that establishes strategic stability so that we don't have misunderstandings that could lead to broader conflict. And so we always reiterate the point. We hear them when they say this. We always respond by saying anything that would compel or force a change in what we have now would be problematic. And we would certainly, our policies on that have not changed. It's been pretty consistent across multiple presidential administrations and remains consistent now.
Do you think China wants to invade Taiwan?
Well, I think China's preference is probably to have Taiwan willingly, voluntarily join them. In a perfect world, what they would want is some vote or a referendum in Taiwan that agrees to fold in. I think that's what they would prefer. Ultimately, it's featured prominently in President Xi's mandate in the time he's been in office. He's made clear that what they call reunification, that's what they call it, is something that has to happen at some point. We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States. The pace of growth in the Chinese military over the last 10 years has no precedent, none. I mean, just what they've done with their Navy alone over the last, they've put billions and billions and billions of dollars in their system. So it's, you look at it, I mean, it's hard to ignore how fast and how big. So I don't think it's just limited to Taiwan. I think they have ambitions to ultimately be able to project power globally the way the U.S. does now.
A doctor traveling on the cruise ship at the center of a hantavirus outbreak has been moved from a special biocontainment unit to a regular quarantine unit in Nebraska.
There's no way that virus is getting out of this building.
The oncologist had helped care for passengers who got sick on the ship. He developed flu-like symptoms while on board, but his initial test results came back inconclusive, one negative, one positive. Meanwhile, as passengers from the ship continue returning home, health officials are on high alert. In Australia, 6 cruise ship passengers are flying in with full PPE on an Australian government plane.
This is one of the strongest quarantine arrangements in response to this hantavirus outbreak you will find anywhere in the world.
But the World Health Organization says some passengers left the ship before the outbreak was fully identified and traveled on commercial flights. Some have since tested positive for the virus. Contact tracing has also alerted people in Kansas and Washington state they may have been exposed. U.S. officials are already looking ahead to make sure crowds will be safe during the upcoming World Cup.
Situations like hantavirus do happen, and we have the infrastructure to protect the public. We do not anticipate the virus having any impact on World Cup plans, as the risk of ongoing transmission remains low.
The cruise ship is on its way to the Netherlands, where officials are still finalizing cleaning and disinfection protocols. In Washington, Malda Rivera, Fox News.
When the call comes in, a special team from Grady gets ready.
Both booties, using 2 pairs of gloves.
They are the Grady EMS Biosafety Transport Team. They specialize in transporting individuals potentially infected with contagious deadly diseases to hospitals.
You only got one shot at it, so can't make mistakes.
Armand Acre leads the team that trains every quarter for situations like this. They've been around for more than a decade, there to transport Ebola patients to Emory 12 years ago. And on Monday, they hit the road again.
Obviously, there's a lot of stress involved.
Robert Underwood was behind the wheel of one of the 2 ambulances on Monday. He says this entire process is a team effort. First, it starts with taking a normal ambulance and transforming it.
So we use like some painter drapes that go from wall to wall. It covers the floor. None of the cabinets or anything are exposed.
And in the back, a professional decks out in protective gear that limits contact with potential diseases and purifies the air so he or she can focus on caring for the patient. While up front, the driver rides as part of a caravan trained in defensive driving and prepared to keep driving to get to their destination.
Because the last thing you want to do is wreck one of these trucks with a patient in the back.
There's no stopping after we get it on the ambulance, and there's always like a backup plans for the backup plans.
It's just another day of work, another day of training, but this time instead of training, it was real world.
A U.S. Air Force captain recounting the moments of a rescue at sea after a small private plane carrying 11 people crash landed in the Atlantic east of Florida.
And you could tell just by looking at them that they were in distress physically, mentally, emotionally.
According to the FAA, the Beechcraft BE-30 Super King Air 300 took off from Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas, bound for Grand Bahama International Airport. Rescue teams said when the plane went down, the emergency locator beacon sent out a warning. The U.S. Coast Guard and Air Force sent teams in, including an HC-130 rescue aircraft, which was on a training mission nearby.
We got notification from Tower that there was a possible downed aircraft. We set up a search pattern, and within minutes we located the raft.
The survivors had been in that life raft for 5 hours.
As a fixed-wing pilot, we trained to that, but I've not known anyone to survive ditching in the ocean.
Rescuers dropped 2 more rafts and more survival equipment. Pararescue teams jumped in the water to help the survivors. The Coast Guard said all 11 people who had been on the crashed plane were successfully rescued. They were flown to Melbourne, Florida, and checked into the hospital.
For all those people to survive is pretty miraculous, and then get in the raft all together.
I'm Reed Binion reporting.
You don't need the government to tell you your life is getting more expensive. Your eyes and your wallet have you covered for that. But the Bureau of Labor and Statistics says inflation came in hotter than expected in April, with the Consumer Price Index at 3.8, up from 3.0, worrying economists along with everyone else who wants to keep their own money.
We've got weak job growth, so stagnation in the economy, but at the same time we got inflation. Caused initially by increase in tariffs, but now then the conflict with Iran has just driven up the price of oil, which has driven up the price of gas and diesel, and that's translating into higher prices throughout the economy.
Professor Alan Jin from the Knaus School of Economics at USD says after seeing the producer price index inflation number hitting 6%, he puts the U.S. chances for a recession at 40%.
The numbers are the highest since 2022, and remember that eventually in that year we had 9% inflation.
The most obvious price increases have been at the gas pump, but Professor Alan Jin flagged laundromats as another example of high energy prices. Look at this, $10.50 to do a load of laundry that doesn't include the soap, and who carries 42 quarters around with them? Professor Jin worries the new Federal Reserve chairman could act irrationally and drive inflation higher if he's pushed by the president to drop interest rates with inflation alarms already ringing.
They shouldn't drop interest rates given how high the inflation level is right now. Whether or not they can resist the political pressure to do that is another question.
Gen Z loves hanging at the mall. And that's because their malls look a little different. They have younger brands, dressing rooms that are well lit so you can take photos and share on social media, and then lots of activities like rock walls. Mace Rich, one of the largest owners of malls in America, says that that is the secret to success.
They value experiences almost more than they value material things. So it's as much about the journey as shopping as the things that they're taking home with them.
And then once they're in the mall, they are spending big. Gen Z expected to hit $12 trillion in spend. And of those dollars, most of them are spent in physical stores. 62% of their retail dollars spent in brick and mortar. So this is a digital-first generation. They might have been iPad kids, but they are physical touch adults.
Yeah, it's something to do. Instead of just being online and just clicking a couple buttons. You can actually feel it, try it on too.
Get that bonding experience too. And as that we grew up during quarantine, I feel like getting out and hanging out with people was a very big thing we didn't appreciate during that time. And now as we grow older, we see that we need to be doing these things, and it's kind of fun.
And it is really fun. Mace Rich, ahead of the internet shopping trend, used to own around 80 malls. Now it's closer to 39. They just acquired one last week because they are super optimistic about the future of Gen Z and the mall. In New Jersey, I'm Madison Allworth, Fox Business.
It's a small change expected to make a big difference. The new officially adopted name recently introduced in the Lancet Medical Journal is polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome, or PMOS. Experts like the Endocrine Society hope the renaming will be more accurate and less misleading for this often misunderstood, complex endocrine and metabolic disorder.
Because it's not all about the ovaries. It's about a woman's lifelong health.
Around 1 in 8 women are affected by PMOS. The former name focused on multiple ovarian cysts and not on other common symptoms like acne, hair growth, darkening of the skin and body creases, irregular periods, and weight gain. Someone with the disorder may have some symptoms, while others could have them all. Doctors say this caused diagnosis delays, fragmented care, and stigma. They're hoping the name change will improve access to care, says Dr. Christine Greaves with Orlando Health Women's Institute.
Previously, people were like, well, I don't have cysts. How do I have PCOS? But now this opens the door to people seeking help if there are concerns with their period, for example.
Greaves says treatment varies based on the symptoms, so this change may help more women find relief.
It's a more broad term to include people more and more into something that is not uncommon at all.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Bridgerton is picking up the pace. Netflix, which released previous seasons of the romance series 2 years apart, says season 5 will debut next year, following this year's season 4, which focused on the relationship between Benedict and Sophie.
What?
The Universal Century expands with Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, The Sorcery of Nymph Circe. The latest chapter in the Japanese animated series arrives in U.S. theaters Friday.
Who's dumb enough to flex about having Bitcoin?
What are you going to do, steal them?
You want to go to Stanford, right?
Yeah.
So why leave it to chance?
4 friends target a crypto billionaire by phishing his daughter, then discover their stunt has consequences in Life Hack. The heist thriller from the producer of Unfriended, Searching, and Missing lands in theaters Friday. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Welcome to Texas, honey.
Beth and Rip leave the mountains of Montana for a new start in South Texas in the Yellowstone sequel, Dutton Ranch.
Either one of you want to walk, I won't hold it against you. We're with you.
We'll be right next to you.
It was a great honor for Kelly and I to get a phone call and say, hey, you know what? We want to continue to tell their story.
She bought the Edwards Ranch. It's the Dutton Ranch now.
Just the level of commitment that was in Yellowstone and trying to bring that to this new world that Beth and Rip enter, that is, quite frankly, my world. It's Beulah's world.
You met Miss Rhea Paloma herself. She's an acquired taste.
Beulah Jackson. I'm Grizzly and Gucci. My ranch is 190 years old, and I worked very hard to protect it. A legacy is a beautiful thing, but only if it survives.
Stars Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser are also executive producers on the new series.
So there is some things that we really deeply care about, and there are stories that we're interested in telling. So being invited to have a voice and have a creative say was really wonderful, actually.
Yeah, and a responsibility too.
Yeah,
a big one.
Life here is gonna work, isn't it?
We'll make it work.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Take a look at this poor duck with a crossbow bolt stuck in its beak.
It was horrifying. Like, just as a picture, a visual of seeing that, like, that's not something you'd normally witness.
Reportedly, the animal is so well known around Salem, Massachusetts, locals nicknamed it Horace. Concerned folks alerted the Newhouse Wildlife Rescue to the mallard's misfortune, who then went to pluck the duck from a river to get it to safety.
It was just right through the beak. It was actually completely superficial. You know, it was right by the nostrils conveniently, so it was like a nose piercing for a duck's beak.
Back at the rescue, they were able to lubricate the bolt and slide it out of Horace's beak. It's not known whether the injury was an accident or done on purpose. In a post, the rescue says the duck is doing well and breathing much better now. It'll be released back into the wild once it makes a full recovery. How about a wildlife warning about a deer that's been wetting its beak? A little too much, perhaps? Yep, now I'm dizzy. Ugh. Authorities in France are telling drivers to watch out for this drunk deer. Yes, it's a real thing. They say it may have been snacking on fermented or decomposing vegetation, causing it to appear intoxicated. The erratic behavior can cause major issues if they rush out into the road, so they're telling people to slow down and be vigilant for any animal appearing to act like they're wearing deer beer goggles. Finally, here's a wet and wild animal rescue that the cat in question may or may not have enjoyed. Ocala, Florida Fire Rescue says this kitten crawled into a storm drain and refused to come out. So they decided to flush it out, pumping water into the drain that sent the cat into the net of a waiting rescuer. The drenched rascal named Dukes is now safe and sound. For Take a Look at This, I'm Patrick Cornell.
If it looks like a firearm, sounds like a firearm, and spits flame like a firearm, it's a firearm, right?
When you look at the firearms of the Revolution, the flintlock musket or the flintlock rifles, they are actually technically, in terms of legal standards in the federal government, not legally a firearm. They are classified as an antique.
And what does that mean?
It is actually not nearly as heavily regulated as a modern firearm. You don't necessarily need a background check for it in most states.
That includes replicas of antique weapons, like this .50 caliber Hawken percussion rifle. The exemption was hammered out during debate of the 1968 Gun Control Act.
The federal government defines an antique as a firearm that was made essentially in or before 1898. It was created to essentially not burden historians, collectors, museums, and other law-abiding gun owners from collecting these significant pieces of history.
Most states have adopted the federal definition, but at least 3, Hawaii, Ohio, and North Dakota, make no distinction between a flintlock and an AR-15.
You can order a black powder pistol through the mail and have it delivered to your house because they're not considered firearms.
Even convicted felons can own such weapons in most places, though Maryland changed its law in 2019 after a convicted sex offender murdered his ex-girlfriend with a 6-shot 44 caliber replica pistol like this one. Reenactor Jason Mulholland thinks states like Hawaii are the ones that have it wrong.
It seems silly to put restriction on something that would be such a terrible weapon if you wanted to, kill people. You can kill more people quickly with a car than you can with a musket.
But fellow reenactor Matthew Tate says there's nothing silly about it.
Regulating a weapon like this is regulating like the power of life and death, right? I mean, whoever holds this holds that power.
We've developed a new autonomy system to seek out and find hotspots on coral reefs and then map them with centimeter scale precision. And so these behaviors are really trying to combine or take advantage of the multimodal sensing capability that Curie has, combining audio sensing and visual sensing to kind of combine them in a sort of a complementary way.
Well, I think the future of this thing is to make us more efficient in our conservation efforts. Coral reefs are in decline everywhere, right? So there are a lot of efforts being going on around the world for conservation and restoration. So a tool like this basically helps the decision makers on figuring out where should they spend their resources and their energy.
Fox 54 Plus has your news, sports, and weather. Start your evening with Fox 54 at 5:30, delivering the latest headlines and live reports straight from the scene. Then, stay informed with Fox 54 News at 9, featuring your Tennessee Valley certified most accurate weather impact team, tracking everything from tornado threats to traffic delays during severe weather. Fox 54 Sports Extra brings you more of what sports fans crave, with deeper insights, expert analysis, and all the action that matters most. On Fox 54 Plus, you'll also find Alabama politics, plus 24/7 weather radar and real-time forecasts to keep you ahead of the storm. Looking for a quick recap? Don't miss Fox 54 Week in Review, highlighting the biggest stories of the week. Jumpstart your morning with Morning Rush, fast-paced news updates featured with uplifting stories from across the globe. Get your entertainment fix with Getting Real, where we break down movie reviews, top 10 lists, and spotlight the newest film. Die Hard fan? Locked On Sports dives deep into the Crimson Tide, the Tigers, college rivalries, and pro action. True crime warrior style? Killer Cases brings you gripping real-life stories that stick with you. Hungry for more? Cooking with Style serves up mouth-watering recipes that are easy to make and impossible to resist. From movie previews before you head to the theater with Take a Look, to must-know headlines from across the region and around the world with In the News. Watch all of these shows on demand and also on the Fox 54 News app, available on Android and iOS devices, streaming 24/7.
There's more to Fox 54 Plus with the Locked On Podcast Network. From the Tide to the Tigers, from college teams to pro, the Locked On Podcast Network gives you insights and analysis you just can't find anywhere else.
These kids, they want to play.
I don't think so. I think it was Chad Baker-Mazzara.
Locked On Sports, streaming every day of the week and right here on Fox 54 Plus.
This is what he's going to tell you.
Trying to find the first place to put a body.
No, sir. The only thing they could do was kill him.
Be the jury and to find the defendant